Alexander slapped Maria right in the face. "Wedding, don't embarrass me in front of people." But when she raised her head, she smiled and said just 3 words. He almost fell. And before we continue the story, write in the comments what is your name and what city are you from. The slap sounded so loud that people at the next door tables, busy with conversations and toasts, everyone fell silent mid-sentence. Those present turned to the side of the bride and groom. And the sound, like a whip, cut through the space filled with music and the polyphonic banquet hall in the restaurant Golden Autumn in Kaliningrad. Guests, relatives, friends, the waiters, all stopped on command, frozen in shock from what happened. Maria, who was only 25 years old, stood in a snow-white dress with a long train, embroidered with pearls and lace, and held her hand on her cheek. Tears came to her eyes, but at the same time there was such a look in her eyes, at times a genuine firmness, that seemed life itself stopped for a moment. Her groom, 32-year-old Alexander, stood opposite, confused. With difficulty he breathed as if he himself was scared of what he had done. However, in his eyes there was still some dangerous fire burning, and he muttered through his teeth, "Don't embarrass me in front of people." These things lasted for long, long seconds of tension as they watched each other. The bride seemed to be gathering forces, her shoulders trembled, and the guests, so recently raised glasses to the happiness of the young, they waited for what would happen further. Suddenly Maria raised her head, she took her hand away from her burning cheek, she smiled, and her voice sounded soft, but so confidently that it seemed as if she had a perfect grasp of the situation. She said 3 words, "I love you. I forgive you." After these words, Alexander as if he had lost the ground under his feet. He expected her to rush at him with accusations, tears, screams, but unexpectedly received something completely other. The slap he delivered was humiliating, loud, offensive, and she just said that she forgives. He couldn't stand it. His lips turned white, and his hands seemed to tremble. For a few moments the man stood, drowning in his own helplessness, and then he turned around sharply and did a few steps towards the exit, but there stopped, as if changing his mind. From that moment, real chaos began in the hall. Maria's parents, who were sitting at one of the nearby tables, jumped up from their seats. The mother exclaimed, "What is going on here?" and rushed to her daughter, trying to understand, not whether this has become some kind of sinister joke. Father looked confused all the time repeating, "Is he really hit her? Right now, in front of everyone." The bridesmaids, all in soft pink dresses, ready at any minute support her with a photo, a bouquet, or any advice, were simply stunned. One of them, Svetlana, came closer and quietly asked, "Are you in pain? What happened?" But Mary, whose cheek was still burning, slowly turned her head from the whisper of her girlfriend to Alexander, who never decided to leave, and looked at him with a calm look. Was in this look and resentment, and something incomprehensible generosity, and perhaps even a challenge. After all, he slapped her in public and she didn't answer as he expected. Maria did everything. She was still smiling, shaking with trembling hands the hem of her wedding dress, which until this moment seemed like a symbol of her purity and a bright future. Well, perhaps she now has a different perspective for this marriage. "I forgive you," just 1 word, but it sounded like it was thrown the ground from under the feet of all the guests. It was not a scream, but a quiet voice in which there was something much more lurking than just condescension. There was a note of firmness, almost anticipation further events. And suddenly everyone in the hall understood, this blow, this slap is something much deeper than reckless the act of an ardent groom. Here, it seems, there was a whole story hidden, woven from grievances, fears, mutual reproaches and, perhaps guilt. But no one had the whole picture. Neither close friends, neither my relatives nor I fully understood how this could have happened. After all, in Maria's relationship, that was the name of the bride, and Alexandra is there was a groom. Until that day, everything seemed if not ideal, then at least stable and serious. They actively were preparing for the celebration, discussing who will be the host, where will it be. There was a wedding going on. She was trying on dresses. He was dealing with the banquet hall and musicians. Everyone saw them as a couple, who firmly decided to go together life. And now the blow received right in front of the people called share their joy. The next minutes turned out to be filled with all sorts of remarks and actions. The presenter came running Maxim, on the go, improvising, trying somehow smooth things over. Waiters tried to behave as best as possible professionally, without interfering, but while wondering if I should call security. Some of the relatives Alexandra looked at him with indignation. Maria, because they didn't understand how a fragile girl could get so upset themselves, their son, usually quite a balanced person. And relatives Mary, on the contrary, stood and angrily looked at the groom, ready for any time to intervene and take my daughter away from this scandalous ceremony. Maria lowered eyes on the bouquet she was holding in her hands. White roses tied with a ribbon ivory, now seemed heavy a burden in her hands. Slowly turning to her mother, she only said, "Mom, I okay." The mother threw up her hands. "How okay? How can this be an okay? What even happened here?" But Maria didn't answer. Instead, took a tiny step forward, as if intending to get closer to Alexander. He stood a few steps away, unsure, scared, but it seems angry at the same time. It seemed like they were fighting inside him two forces. One anger and desire to assert oneself at any cost. The other is fear facing the inevitable consequences of his action. "Alexander," she said quietly, almost in a whisper, so that he could barely heard in the hum of conversation. "Alexander," Maria repeated louder. I would like to continue this evening, but we need to talk alone." Conversations in the hall as if they had fallen silent, because everything where they tried their best to eavesdrop on what he would say the bride. But she, keeping calm, dropped the bouquet on my friend's table, took a few more steps and took the groom's arm. He shuddered, as if her touch burned. The same hand with which he just hit her, his palm was cold, and she felt herself throb his heart. "Please," she asked. "She's already on her way to the guests." "Sorry, we'll be back soon." "We'll be back. Consider this a small hitch in our celebration." With these and the words of Maria softly but persistently pulled Alexander away from the hall corridor leading to the utility rooms, the restaurant premises where it was possible to be alone. Their path was silent, however echoes were heard from all sides, guests' reactions. "It can't be. This is what a nightmare. So what now? She too much condescending. He needs to be dumped immediately. Or maybe they have had it for a long time problems. It's creepy anyway. This shouldn't happen at a wedding." When they closed the door behind them, a small, semi-dark room, rather similar to a small storage room or staff office, Maria removed her hand and took a step back, pressing her back against wall. Alexander also stopped, leaning his hands on the old wooden table. For a few moments, both were silent. The silence was broken by the sound of water dripping from a closed tap somewhere in the neighborhood podsop. And also Lesque dishes, which came from the kitchen. "Why are you like this? Did you do that?" she asked finally. In her there was no hysteria in the voice, there were no harsh words notes. It was quiet, almost lifeless, the tone of a man who is tired of pain. Alexander was choking, unable to find words. It seems he himself didn't fully understand how it came to this. "You were there during toast? You mentioned what I asked for. Don't tell you. I told you before wedding that I don't want everyone to know details of my past life, especially about my deal with partners. But you began to hint that you pulled me out of debt. It's like you did it on purpose, emphasize that I owe you." She smiled bitterly. "I didn't say that in such a situation context. I wanted to say that we overcame together, that love is mutual assistance. And if you hadn't trusted me, I was able to help. That is, on the contrary, I wanted to emphasize your courage, your willingness to move forward despite difficulties. But you didn't understand everything at all, so." Alexander bit his lip in despair. I don't know, maybe I take everything too seriously. But I have something exploded inside me when I heard everyone looking at me with pity or reproach, I don't know. I felt like you were putting me on display, a laughing stock, as if I'm not a man, as if the whole it's my merit that you sorted everything out. And I lost it. She ran her hand over her cheek, still burning from the blow. It hurt, but most of all it was the soul that burned. Listen, Alexander, Maria said. I never wanted to humiliate you. I wanted us to have an honest one, a sincere toast about the distance we've come trials. I'm proud of you, because I started a business from scratch. Yes, there were mistakes. Yes, I helped you get out, and we did it together. Should it hurt you? I thought it was a reason for pride. And now she fell silent and looked at him, trying not to cry, but tears were already glistening on her eyelashes. You see, when you raised your hand to me, and in front of everyone, there's something inside me broke off. I don't know if I can forget this moment, but I said that I forgive because I believe we can stop this. We can find your way further, if, of course, you yourself this is what you want. Alexander slowly sat down on a chair at the table, covered his face with his hands. Brown hair, usually neatly styled gelled hair, was now disheveled from excitement and the heat in the room. The forehead he was covered in sweat. I want to, he finally said. I didn't want this. I didn't allow anyone to do this. I didn't do this to myself until today. I'm sorry, that I behaved like a savage. I don't know, can you really forgive? I see your cheek burning, and I understand that this is terrible. Maria slowly approached him and sat down, squatting next to him. She put her palm on his knee. But you understand, she said, if one day you raised your hand against me, and we'll just hush it up without discussing it deeply, then there might be a repeat. I don't want to live in fear. We must either decide that we can move forward together, or trust each other and learn talk without giving in to such rage. He swallowed nervously. For the first time throughout their entire relationship they spoke so sharply about something that might have been worth talking about earlier. Maybe they are too. Were you in a hurry to get married? Maybe they didn't finally understood how to overcome your internal conflicts before tie the knot. But there is no turning back now. Now they both are on the threshold of something new, perhaps even dangerous. We can now go out and announce to everyone that the wedding continues, Maria said. But then I want to know what you promise. Never raise your hand against me again, and don't hold a grudge if you don't have something. It turns out that we are partners in this life, and not enemies. I don't want to be yours, an enemy that needs to be beaten in order to subjugate. Alexander was silent for a long time, but then I buried my forehead in her shoulder. I agree. I promise. And if you consider, if necessary, we can cancel all of this right away now, because I understand, perhaps, you don't want to marry me after such an act, but I want to be with you and learn control myself. I just don't know how, continued Alexander. Father, all life has taught me that if something goes wrong in your opinion, we need to show character. I could have hit my mom myself. I hated him for this, but I repeated the same thing. Maria ran her hand through his hair. Her heart was beating wildly. You have to be like your father. You can choose another path, but you need work on yourself, serious, long. He nodded, and at that moment the door opened slightly. A friend stood on the threshold, Alexander Dmitri, in an expensive jacket, which, apparently, he put on especially for wedding to look respectable. Face Dmitri was pale. Hey, it's okay, he said as in a calmer tone, but in the eyes the tension was palpable. Everyone there was in a panic. Maria's parents already wanted to call the police. Your parents are in jail, frowning, they don't know what to say. In general, the situation is critical. If honestly, I don't know what to do. Maria, she stood up slowly. We were almost done. Alexander apologized. We'll be right out. Please tell everyone, calm down, and that in 5 minutes we will be back. We have an important conversation. Dmitri, he looked at Alexander with distrust, who rose from his chair, straightening back. He looked dull and confused, but there was no longer any light in his eyes, anger, only confusion. Dmitri nodded, said, "Okay, but hurry up," and carefully closed the door. Maria quietly sighed. "Well, are we going out?" Alexander awkwardly walked towards the door. He extended his hand as if he wanted to touch to her cheek, to check how hard she was in pain, but Maria pulled away slightly. "Not now." Then he felt like something inside him snapped, but not became insist. Instead, he opened the door and let her go ahead. When they returned into the banquet hall, they were met by dozens tense glances. Someone was shackled pity for the bride, someone's indignation to the groom. And yet the majority those present were relatives or friends, both of them, and didn't know how to react. After all, everyone has their own struggle in life. Host Maxim stood at the celebration, confused scenes, hesitant to take the microphone. Mother Mary, Elena, all in tears, jumped up to daughter, "Darling, let's get out of here. I don't need all this." But Maria only shook her head. Father Maria, Victor on the contrary, he approached Alexander and sternly asked, "Boy, what's going on in your head?" But Alexander only quietly answered, I'm sorry, Victor Petrovich, this is no longer will happen again." Victor looked at him, as if trying to understand whether it was possible to believe these words. After all, looking back at his daughter, he said, I don't know whether I should believe you. This is Marinina life. She's not little anymore, she's doing everything herself decides. But I'll only say one thing, if this will happen again. He didn't finish, only shook his head. Maria stood in the middle hall in front of the guests. It seemed to her that the whole world looks at her, condemns her for that she didn't run away, but she held on back straight. "Dear guests," she began loud enough for everyone to hear. "I understand that you have witnessed disgusting act. I will not to justify the groom, but now I ask, give us a chance and don't turn this evening into a disaster in a fight and a showdown. Whoever wants can stay, and we can too. We will try to continue the celebration. Those who can't accept what happened, I will understand, if you leave." There was a noise. Someone sighed with relief because not I wanted to leave the wedding, which had been collected for so long. Someone, on the contrary, he whispered. She should quit. How can I continue? But out loud no one uttered this reproach. People always tend to wait for her to decide for herself. Alexander stood next to her, with her head down, but when she finished speaking, he found the strength to add, I apologize to Maria, her parents, and to all of you. I have let you down in the most important day of our life. I am ready to bear responsibility for one's actions. The phrase sounded like a death sentence to himself, to myself. After that there was silence, which was broken only for a few seconds, the sound of light music still playing from the speakers, which no one stopped. Everyone was waiting to see how this scene would end. But, to everyone's surprise, Maria took Alexander by the arm and said, Let's invite you to the tables. Musicians, please, play something calm. Alexander needs to be rethought a little the evening's program, but I would like that all who remain could still drink, and eat, and talk to each other, friend. After all, you came to our celebration. This is how this strange wedding began, the evening that promised to be just an hour ago fun, joyful and memorable, and has now become a sharp test for everyone present. Some of the guests left the event. One of Maria's second cousins, known for her categorical nature, slammed the door loudly, taking everyone away with her two other distant relatives with the words, You can't do that. A couple more friends Alexandra hurried away with the words, Forgive me, but I can't do this, see. But most remained, at least out of a desire to support the bride, but someone still believed that one slap does not define the whole further life. After some time Maria asked her friend to speak, childhood Anna, who worked as a family psychologist. They planned that she will give a speech about the importance of respect and trust in marriage. Now this speech was especially on topic. Anna stood up from her places. Her light brown hair was neatly laid in a bun, and the dress matched her gray-blue eyes. She looked, with one on the soft and friendly side, on the other, there was a sense of confidence in her posture professional. Approaching the microphone, she glanced around the room. The light that flashed in her, the anxiety in her eyes indicated that she also worries about everything of what happened. But, taking a deep breath, began. Dear newlyweds, dear guests. I have the honor to say today a few words about what marriage is and what values are at its core. I would like to start by saying that couples find their own way. There are no universal recipes on how to keep love and respect throughout life. But there are fundamental principles, without whose life together looks like a shaky house of cards, which can collapse at the slightest breath of the wind. These principles of trust, mutual understanding, the ability to listen and hear each other. And, of course, the main thing is the inadmissibility of violence in any form. At these words, some guests looked away, perplexed. They looked at each other because everyone understood what Anna is hinting at. But this was said without directly mentioning what happened. Alexander sat with a tense face, glancing fearfully from time to time at Maria. She was sitting very straight, only occasionally touching the cheek, as if remembering the blow. Anna continued, People often ask, what should I do if conflicts arise in relationships? And they are inevitable. We are all different. We have different experience, temperament, expectations. Quarrels are part of life. But there is a line that we can't cross. The line. We understand each other. We argue, and I hurt you. I humiliate you physically or mentally. If this line it turns out that it has been passed, then the consequences may be catastrophic. But even then, if both partners are ready to work on themselves, speak honestly, don't keep silent the couple has a chance to fix situation. You could hear her speaking not in theory. Her voice sounded as if she addressed Maria specifically and Alexander. Love is not only passion, is respect for the feelings of another man. This is his desire well-being. When between two people there is a really strong emotional connection, they don't want to hurt each other pain. If this happens suddenly, it is a signal that you need to either look for professional help, or go to the root of the problem and change yourself from the inside. Anna paused briefly till the guests had time to comprehend her words. For one, someone from the tables sighed loudly, others awkwardly moved the plate. There is still a vital tension in the hall, but at the same time for a while many listened attentively, realizing that the topic, albeit painful, is very important. We are gathered here today to celebrate the birth of a new family. And I sincerely wish the newlyweds that, despite any mistakes and misunderstandings, they learn to be friends to a friend, the closest people who know how to stop and ask forgiveness, how to find understanding, how refrain from words and actions that then you will regret it all your life. I wish, so that their home would always be filled with laughter, and not cry of pain. I wish that the hand which the husband touches his wife, it has always been an expression of love, not aggression. After all, this is the only way two people can call themselves family. Congratulations. Be happy. Almost the entire speech sounded even, professionally. But in the end, Anna, she broke off for a moment. Her voice trembled. Some of the guests quietly applauded. The others joined in, but the applause came out restrained, a little sad. When Anna walked away from the microphone, her eyes were wet. Maria stood up and hugged, "Friend." "Thank you," she whispered. And Anna smiled slightly and nodded. Alexander also stood up. I wanted to say something, but I didn't dare take it microphone. He only bowed briefly. Anna, as if thanks for the reminder about how important it is not to commit now the second mistake. Host Maxim, trying maintain at least the appearance of a festive atmosphere, waited for Anna to sit down, and said, "Well, friends, thank you for such important words. And now I would like to inform you that we have the cake ready." He tried to put on a smile and clapped palms. "So please, take a couple of minutes' patience, and we will gladly bring out the symbol a sweet and joyful future newlyweds. Several waiters disappeared behind the kitchen door to move the cake. Guests, they started whispering. Maria and Alexander continued stand nearby, scanning the room with your eyes. Gradually people began to talk a little louder. Someone was pouring themselves some wine, someone was talking about the fact that it's time to refresh the champagne. But glances at the bride and groom were still reproachful or, according to at least tensely attentive. "Are you ready?" Maria asked quietly, turning to Alexander. "Yes," he replied. "Let's go cut the cake." Cake carried out on a special table on wheels. It was snow-white, decorated with fresh flowers, with 3 tiers. At the top there were figurines of the bride and groom in a humorous style, holding hands. One of the guests noticed this contrast. Smiling figures and a tense couple, who is going to cut their sweet future. The presenter proclaimed, "Friends, now Maria and Alexander are for the first time they will cut the wedding cake together and treat everyone each other and all of us with this symbol have a sweet life. Get your cameras ready, phones. Let this moment become a part of their and our history." Usually and at this moment the guests joyfully cheer newlyweds, filming a video and laughing. But now everyone stood up silently and they watched with curiosity how the young people would interact. Maria took the knife, waited until Alexander put his hand down over her hand. Together they did careful cut of the upper tier. Then Alexander carefully put the piece aside plate, took a fork. Maria slightly she smiled. They somehow managed it carefully, slowly. "Do you want the first one?" Alexander asked. She nodded. He brought her a card, a fork, and a piece of cake. She ate it, trying not to bite it lip from the tension. Then she did in return, she offered him a piece of his fork. Alexander made a small bite, and a glint flashed in his eyes, unsure gratitude. The guests burst out applause. This time a little warmer. Perhaps people wanted to believe that everything it will get better. Perhaps they decided support the bride who did not leave in tears, but tries to save the holiday. Be that as it may, many felt a slight relaxation of the atmosphere. Cooks, the restaurant and waiters began to cut the rest of the cake, spread out plates and serve to guests. People reached for the dessert, taking a sip champagne. Some still have a twinkle in their eye. The question was, why does she put up with this? Others whispered, maybe it really is they love each other, anything can happen. The third one was just listening to music, exchanging phrases about mutual friends and relatives, trying to leave behind in brackets what happened an hour ago. Maria feels that her nervous system at the limit. I allowed myself a little relax. She sat down at the table, and Dmitri with another friend of Alexander, Igor, approached them. "Listen, I'm glad that you still haven't cancelled the wedding," Dmitri muttered, although his eyes were still full of anxiety. "I hope you can figure this out for real, not just in words." Igor, a tall guy with short haircut, added, "Alexander, I'm sorry that my words may sound it was risky, but I was shocked. Never, I wouldn't have thought you were capable of such a thing. Do you even realize that this could have been point of no return?" Alexander lowered look. "Yes, Igor, I realize it. I am grateful to Maria for what she gives me chance. And I am grateful to you that you did not turn away." "Well," Igor sighed. "This is all serious. I don't know what will happen next, but I always stay in touch if you need advice or support. And not only to you, but also to you, Marina, because people can do it very differently, react to such situations. Some the girls just say, that's it, goodbye. Forever. And you decided to give a second chance. I don't know if it's right or not, but I see it, that you do this not under pressure, but consciously." Maria smiled slightly. "Thank you, Igor. Yes, I do that because that I love him and I want to believe that we can fix the situation." It came soon. It's time for the wedding dance, that very one, which usually opens the whole celebration. But now everything has gone wrong. After all, The celebration had been going on for a long time, but the first dance hadn't happened yet was performed. The presenter hesitated. Should I approach this question? Newlyweds, but still gathered his courage, approached their table. Excuse me, he said, I understand, evening. Things don't work out the way you wanted, but would you still like to fulfill your first dance? I know you rehearsed in studios. Maybe this will at least bring back a little bit. Would you like to share the wedding atmosphere with us? Maria and Alexander looked at each other. They're actually a few months old. Took dance lessons to perform a graceful waltz to the melody that chose it as their song. Yes, now the mood wasn't the best, but maybe this dance will help something feel again, remember why they are together. Let's try, he said quietly, said Maria. Sometimes we rehearsed. Alexander nodded. Good. The presenter nodded happily and rushed to musicians to give the signal. Maria and Alexander stood up and walked to the center of the hall, where they made space for dance floor. The guests, feeling that something important is about to start, stand up and surrounded them in a semicircle. Someone took out their phones to film it action. Now the views were not ironic. They mixed curiosity, sadness, and maybe a drop of sympathy. A gentle melody began to play. They were planning to waltz. Alexander carefully placed Maria's hand on Natalia's, with his other hand he took her palm. Sighing, she put her other hand on his shoulder. Inside, everything was clenching from excitement and conflicting feelings. Only that he hit her, and now they should show a beautiful dance of love. But she tried to pull herself together, because waltz requires certain movements, synchronicity. They took their first smooth steps. It seemed like my legs were moving automatically, because the body remembered the movement, rehearsed in advance. Turn, step, smooth turn, just as I taught choreographer. But in the eyes of both was reflected voltage. After a few turns Maria felt tears' eyes well up. I remembered those moments when they were rehearsing in the hall, laughed if something didn't work out, like Alexander supported her and said that loves to watch her dance. I remembered how they dreamed about that this dance will become their symbol of unity, something new and beautiful. And here it is, everything is different now. She looked at Alexandra, and their eyes met. He seemed to read this moment in her. Everything is in the eyes, pain, and the desire for happiness, and hope that this slap was just one single terrible one by mistake. Music seemed to surround them, a warm but fragile cocoon. They continued to move in a circle, doing pirouettes, supporting each other. Guests did not dare to break the silence. When the music gets over, Alexander carefully tilted Maria in the last step, and a tear still escaped from his eyes. Slowly lifted her up, released her hand, and they both froze for a second. In the hall there was applause, restrained but sincerely. Many saw that the dance was successful. It's not easy for them. Someone whispered, "How is this possible? Hard." Some nodded in shock, and some even I cried because I understood that these young people were faced with a test, capable of destroying many families. Maria stepped forward and pressed her forehead against his chest, slightly bent over, closing eyes. Alexander awkwardly hugged her, closed his eyes and whispered, "Forgive me." She just nodded, unable to speak. The presenter, feeling that now this is not the time for loud shouts, he gave a sign. Musicians continue quietly and calmly music. And so something started in the hall, like a quiet evening where a couple is. Slowly I was coming to my senses, and the guests had broken up into small groups, discussed various things. Someone remembered funny stories, trying to defuse the situation. Many decided that since the young people don't say goodbye to everyone is not leaving, so it's a holiday formally continues. And indeed, from time to time someone raised a toast to the family. Peace and love reigned, so that everyone knew how to forgive, so that not similar scenes were repeated. Soon several invited friends came out dancing, though not joyfully dancing, but simply swaying to the rhythm. Some invited women's companies. They talked quietly, throwing glances at Maria, and then they came up, to tell her words of support. The men approached Alexander. Briefly they said, "Don't be stupid, control yourself, appreciate that she didn't leave." Alexander silently nodded. Closer to midnight, many guests they began to slowly gather at home. Some people left for another city, others I'm mentally tired from the stress. Maria and Alexander stood at the exit of the hall, trying to say goodbye to everyone personally. No one else had this moment illusions that this will be a typical fun wedding until the morning with dancing. But to the credit of they approached and hugged many guests. Maria shook hands with Alexander and spoke encouraging words, even if not without any criticism at all. "Maria," she said, one of her friends, "you're amazing what you can do. Forgive. But please remember that first of all, you need to take care of yourself." And I always considered Alexander to be calm. Alexander's classmate admitted. "It's obvious everyone has their own skeletons in the closet. I hope everything will be fine with you. If you want I can do family therapy. Recommend an excellent specialist," suggested a young couple, friends of Maria. "We'll think about it," she thanked everyone softly. "Maria, thank you for coming. Thank you for remained." When the flow of guests thinned out, Maria's mother came up to them. Her eyes were sad, but she didn't cry anymore. "Daughter, we were leaving with Dad. This evening I'm really tired, but if anything happens, call me, both of you. Please don't forget that we always on your side when it comes to about mutual respect." She paused, turned her gaze to Alexander. "Alexander, I hope you realize that did. And if you really love Maria, then prove to her that this is not will happen again." He straightened up and felt how painfully he feels inside heart. "Elena Ivanovna, I understand everything, and I'm not going to speak empty words. I will prove it with my actions." "This okay?" she nodded. "Maria, say goodbye to guests and go somewhere alone. I don't know if you had plans for wedding night, but maybe it's better for you just be together and discuss everything without extra ears." "Yes, Mom, that's what we'll do," Maria answered, hugging her. When the parents they left and the hall became practically empty. There are literally a few close relatives left, friends who were going to have another drink, tea, or just wait for a taxi. Maxim, the presenter, was already standing there dressed in street clothes, collecting equipment. "Guys," he addressed the newlyweds. "I'm really sorry that it happened this way. I expected this situation and I understand that everything plans fell through. But still, thanks for not they kicked me out and gave me the opportunity to at least somehow bring the event to an end. I hope everything works out for you." "Maxim, we are grateful to you," she replied. "Maria, you tried to maintain respect to us, and I appreciate it." They exchanged with a handshake, and soon Maxim also left. Maria and Alexander were left alone in the hall, except for a few waiters, who were clearing the tables. Everything looked sad. Empty tables, dented napkins, a little spilled champagne, the remains of the cake on the plates, which is so no one really finished eating. And in the center of the room there are rose petals on the floor that were once sprinkled the path for the bride and groom in early evening. "Well," she said quietly, "Maria, that's it. So our wedding." Alexander looked at guiltily her. "Sorry, I ruined this for you day." "This day?" "Yes," she replied. "But it doesn't necessarily mean it's spoiled all life. Everything now depends on us." He nodded, feeling a lump in his throat. "Maybe we should go to the hotel, like we planned? We have a number booked." "Yes, we'll go," she agreed. "I'll change and then I think we need to have a frank conversation." They moved slowly towards the exit, saying goodbye to the staff. In my head Maria had hundreds of thoughts about how their future life will be about that. Is she doing the right thing by giving him a chance? Alexander, and whether she will ever feel like I'm with him complete security. After all, even now, when he looks repentant, there was a seething inside her anxiety, a splinter of fear and mistrust. But she understood that all this was huge work for both of them. And if they want to save the marriage, they will have to look inward, perhaps turn to specialists, discuss all the grievances and unresolved conflicts. They came out of restaurant. The ordered food was waiting for them at the door. Pre-wedding car, black executive sedan with a bow-on hood. The driver, with his head down, apparently, knew about what happened and did not dare smile with congratulations. Just opened the door for them. Maria and Alexander sat down in the back seat. It was warm inside, it smelled of leather upholstery and light air freshener. The car started moving to the hotel, which was located half an hour away driving. The road went through the night Kaliningrad. The lights of shop windows and the lights were on, but there was silence in the car. Alexander tried to take Maria's hand. She didn't pull away, but she didn't answer either with a reciprocal handshake. She simply sat there, looking at window. Maria, he finally said, I understand that you are scared and in pain. I'm not asking you to believe it now, that everything will immediately become good, but I ask, give me a chance to prove that I'm changing. She slowly turned to face him. I have no other option but to either leave right now or give this chance. I chose the second. But understand, if this will happen again, I won't do it again. Attempts. I understand, hastily he confirmed. You can even write it down on paper. I swear, no need for papers and receipts, she said. I need sincerity, not formalities. Until the end of the journey they are more not. We were talking. The driver stopped near the entrance to a luxury hotel, near which is usually planted by happy people, brides and grooms who enter the fay under the admiring glances of the staff. But today no one greeted them with joy. Only the doorman on duty opened the door and said, "Good evening, congratulations." That sounded too dry. Congratulations. Perhaps he had already heard some gossip about how it all went. Or maybe just tired in the evening. A woman was waiting for them in the room. Large canopy bed, petals grew on pillows and a vase of champagne on table. This was discussed in advance. The hotel offered a romantic wedding package night. But now it looked like a mockery. Maria walked inside, feeling as if she plays someone else's role, finding himself in a beautiful decorations, but without the festive feeling. I'll take a shower, she said quietly, and then I'll change. Alexander replied, okay, I'll take off my jacket for now. She disappeared in the bathroom, closing the door. She took off her dress, remained in her underwear, looked at myself in the mirror. There was a reddish tint on my cheek. The imprint is not bright, but noticeable if take a closer look. A slap at a wedding. Who I could have thought so, she thought bitterly. Maria. She turned on the water and stood there for a long time under the warm streams, as if trying wash away the dirt from the soul, not just from the body. My thoughts were confused. There were images before my eyes, faces of relatives and friends. I remembered the speech Anna on the inadmissibility of violence. But, having left from the shower, Maria still felt some relief. She put on a robe, dried my hair towel. Wedding makeup is basically washed away. Only a little bit of dark remained, circles from mascara under the eyes. I looked in mirror. It seemed that she had aged several years in one evening. When I returned to the room, Alexander had already managed change into regular trousers and a t-shirt. He sat in a chair, staring at the floor. Hearing her steps, he looked up. In his there was a humble look, in his eyes repentance. Maria, he began, come on, let's sit down and talk. She glanced around the room and decided to sit down on a bed strewn with petals. It was too awkward. That's why I turned around the chair opposite Alexander and sat down, crossing his legs under him, wrapping himself in robe. I'm ready, she said. Speak. I want to tell you everything, the truth that you may not know completely. He swallowed. About my relationship with my father, about why sometimes I can't to contain aggression. Not to justify oneself, but so that you understand where it comes from and what am I going to do with this next. She nodded, frowning slightly. Okay, I'm listening. He sighed heavily, ran his hand through his hair. When I was 10, I witnessed how I hit my mom in the kitchen because of something nonsense. He came home drunk then, and she started to swear that there was no money in the house. he spends everything on drinking. And in return I hit her so hard that she fell. I remember, as I stood in the doorway and couldn't believe it, that it was my father. But since then it has become repeat. Mom screamed, then cried, then they made up. And you know, what's the worst part? He covered his face with my hands. I started to consider this the norm. Maria listened attentively. Her heart I was convulsing in pain. I hated him for the fact that he beat my mother, he continued Alexander. But gradually in me the idea was formed that a man shows strength in this way, when he can't prove his case words. And in my head it's as if fought. I felt that it wrong, but somewhere deep down the pattern was laid down. If you can't handle it differently, just hit and that's all. When I grew up, I tried to avoid conflicts physically, but knew that I have this dark side. I went to see a psychologist at university because that I was afraid that I could repeat the mistakes father. I thought I had everything under control. But, you see, he is bitter, he chuckled, and turned out to be wrong. Maria nodded silently, feeling tears are getting closer to her throat. She guessed that Alexander had problems in the family, but I didn't know the details. He didn't like talk about this topic. What now? She asked quietly. Do you realize that you need to work with a psychologist? And not only that once, but systematically for a long time? Yes, he said confidently. I don't want to anymore to show such aggression. I'm ashamed that it happened on the most important day, and in front of everyone. This is probably some kind of sign that I can't do it anymore, hide it inside. Or, maybe, I thought marriage was automatic, will solve my internal conflicts, and it turned out, on the contrary, that the tension I saved up, and it came out. But I want change. He leaned forward, looking into her eyes. Maria, I love you. I am grateful to you for helping me with business, that you believed in me, that you gave I have a chance to become better. And today I did the worst thing I could think of. I am ready to do everything to deserve yours trust. Just don't leave me now. Give me a chance to prove that I won't more like that. She sat silently, trying hold back tears, then deeply sighed and asked, Alexander, do you understand that my love for you is no longer, will it always be the same? What will always be now? Is that drop of poison in your soul? Anxiety. Suddenly again? What can I say? Yes, we together, but at the same time I will be afraid inside. Won't you lose your temper at the first argument? I understand, he replied dully. And I will have to earn your peace of mind, your sense of security. I want to go to see a psychologist. I can go to Anna, if you trust her, or anyone, to another specialist. I'm not going to make it up excuses. I know I'm guilty. But I also know that if I can't handle this, then I'll be left alone. And I don't want that. Maria closed her eyes for a moment. The image of my father, uncles, mother popped into my head, who looked at her with reproach, fear that she would connect her life with potential rapist. She became, it was scary, but at the same time she understood, leaving now may be a solution, but she herself is not ready yet. Her depth feelings for Alexander were not exhausted this evening. Okay, she said finally. I want to go to consultation with you so that figure out why we haven't learned talk differently. And I want that you definitely figured out yours aggression. I can't live without it, calm down. Okay, he exhaled relief. I agree. For a while they were silent. Then Maria decided to ask the question that tormented her throughout the wedding. Alexander, do you even respect me? That moment when you hit, screaming, no disgrace me in front of people. This also meant that you thought that I was humiliating you. I looked down. I was furious because what it seemed to me that you were exhibiting make me look stupid, like I'm a loser, who couldn't do anything without you. But I twisted your words in my head. In fact, you just said that we went through this together, the difficult path, and that I was not afraid to ask for help. I understand that I myself have distorted the meaning. Next. Then the 7-minute madness. It flared up inside me. It humiliates me. I need to put her on place. As if I were a father repeating old model. I really thought back then, she has no right to talk to me like that. And after the slap, the realization immediately came, what did I do? She felt like in my chest tightens with cold. I wanted to humiliate you. On the contrary, I thought you were purposeful and brave. Yes, you needed my help, but I was proud that you weren't afraid of her except. Alexander felt like in my eyes are burning. I'm a fool. You're a man with certain injuries, she corrected. And now we have to decide together what to do this. Silence fell again. Somewhere outside the window the night streets were noisy. There was something glittering on the table nearby, champagne they didn't think about. Wedding gifts were left in the car or at relatives. The bride's bouquet was lying in restaurant. From all this celebration all that's left is the stress I've experienced. And more this room, strewn with rose petals, which now seemed like a farce. You know, Maria said suddenly. It seems that we shouldn't try to be now the perfect romantic couple. It's hard to imagine how we will be, to spend this wedding night. He lowered his head. I understand. I don't count on anything. I'm just glad that you're here. I'll probably sleep, it's bad, she sighed. But if you don't, it's hard, stay close. I need time to get used to the fact that you don't, 'cause I feel pain when I don't expect it. Maybe I'll shudder. No. Don't be offended. I won't, he said, squeezing fists. I'll just try to be as calm as possible. She nodded, got up, walked to the bed and brushed off covered the rose petals as if she wanted clear the space of all this beautiful but empty scenery, reminiscent of a fairy tale that never happened. Let's at least lie down, she suggested Maria. I'm tired. All my muscles ache, and my head is splitting. Of course, he said. And they both lay down on the bed, feeling very awkward. Maria lay down on the edge, tucking the pillow under the head. Alexander is slightly to the side. The distance between them was greater than the distance between just husband and wife, but both understood that time was needed. If you want, you can turn off the light, he suggested. She extended her hand to the table lamp switch, turned it off and the room plunged into semi-darkness, illuminated only by the reflections of the city lights, penetrating through the curtains. For a while they lay in silence, listening to their breathing each other and the hum of the city. Mary did not. I slept. A scene from Hall, his hand, suddenly breaking away and striking her cheek. This is not. It still fit into her mind, as if she was still asking herself, this really happened to me. But she felt that she was moving away from it's not a solution for him now, but only escape from reality. She couldn't abandon all common plans, memories, dreams that have managed to fold into their relationship. If he really will change, then maybe this wound it can be tightened. But still there will be a scar left. Alexander looked at the ceiling, experiencing a similar whirlwind of thoughts. He recalled how I promised myself never to become like father and how he destroyed everything in one moment. In his thoughts he was already imagining how he was going to psychologist, attends group classes on anger management, tries to care for Maria, asks her for forgiveness parents. He had a long journey ahead of him, redemption, and he didn't know if he could go through it to the end. But I had to try. So they lay there until Maria didn't doze off. He heard her breathing, it became more even, and I realized that she had fallen asleep. A slight tremor ran through me from time to time over her shoulders. Perhaps she saw disturbing dreams, but at least she was nearby. Alexander did not dare to hug her, so as not to scare. He just lay there, staring into the darkness. When sleep finally overcame him, he buried his face in the pillow, and in his sleep he saw his childhood, the house where his father was screamed, and the mother cried, and the little one, the boy who was afraid to intervene. Morning brought something similar to light tiredness. Maria woke up first, I opened my eyes and saw that Alexander still lying on his back, a little bit her aside. Under one blanket, but as if separated by an abyss. She rose silently and went into the bathroom. I washed my face. The redness on my cheek has almost gone away, there was still a barely noticeable swelling. But there was still a heaviness in my soul. They didn't agree on whether they would be together spend the rest of the day after the wedding. Usually newlyweds plan breakfast, photo session, and then they can go to a little trip. But now all these plans seem to have lost their meaning. When Maria came out of the bathroom, he too had already woke up and sat up in bed, rubbing eyes. "Hello," he squeezed out. "How did you sleep?" She shrugged. So. "And you're not very good either," he admitted. "Listen, maybe we should go have breakfast at restaurant? Or you don't want to be on people?" She thought. "I would drink coffee, but I don't want to sit for everyone looked at us." "We can bring breakfast to the room," he suggested. "I think they charge extra, they will do it." "Okay," she agreed, although I didn't have much of an appetite. Alexander I called the reception and asked them to deliver it to room: coffee, croissants, light snacks. While they waited, each sat in his own corner of the room. Maria was scrolling through the feed in phone, afraid to see the photos or videos from their wedding, which, it may have already been uploaded to social networks' guests. But for some reason no one dared to make this scandal public. "I see," she said quietly. "Nika posts in social networks. It's good that we have adequate friends," Alexander muttered. "No, they want to make this public condemnation. I wouldn't want everything to this became known to our colleagues or some strangers. Although, of course, if someone posts it, we can stop them." "Yes, Maria," she sighed. "Mom and Dad might call today, they will find out how we are. I'm scared, imagine what they will say when emotions will fit in. But I made it clear to them that I wouldn't. I'm leaving now, so I hope they will resign themselves." After a few minutes there was a knock at the door. Breakfast was brought. The waiter placed coffee on the table, white porcelain cups, a plate with croissants, fruit. He unobtrusively wished bon appetit and left. Let's have some coffee," she smiled with difficulty. "Maria. I can't wake up without coffee." He nodded. They sat down at the table and made a sip of hot drink. "What do we have future?" she suddenly asked, looking into cup. Alexander was taken aback, didn't choke. "I hope we have the future, if we work on it. I understand that you are scared right now, but I am ready to fix everything." "I understand," she replied. "I thought we were going to have a honeymoon month, but now it might be wiser cancel all travel plans and start solving problems right away." "Or how do you think so?" "Yes, we had a trip to Cyprus in a week," he reminded. "But maybe let's really think before we fly there, pretending that everything is fine." She took another sip of coffee. I need to pretend now. I need time, realize what happened and start therapy, as we talked about. Until I see that you are working on yourself, no, I will be able to enjoy the beach and romance." "Agreed," he nodded. "Let's cancel the trip, or at least we'll reschedule it another time." "Okay, I'll call travel agency, I might be able to negotiate rescheduling or partial refund." "I'll pay all the fines," he quietly interjected. "You shouldn't spend money on it." She didn't argue. For her now it was not the same a question worth discussing. We drank coffee and the tension slowly subsided, dissolved. But still, between them the silence dragged on, filled with thoughts about that now their marriage did not start with romance, but with a slap in the face and bitter tears. "You know," Maria said, putting it aside cup, "maybe we should leave this hotel? I don't feel comfortable here. I want go back home. Or to my parents." "Better go home," he suggested. "We'll go to our parents, we won't leave early in the morning. We have the apartment, although not that big, there will be our things. There are no strangers." She agreed. They quickly got ready, we called a taxi. The car and driver were already there. She left. They left the hotel without further ado. At the reception they only noted that they were leaving earlier. They left the key. The manager abandoned. They have a puzzled look, but nothing, he said. Perhaps he knew that they had the wedding night was booked for 2 days, and now he was surprised. When Maria and Alexander returned to their apartment in a new district of Kaliningrad, it became a little easier. There was the usual, the environment, their common things, although not that's all, because some of her things were still stored at my parents'. They had a 2-room apartment in a new building. They bought it in mortgage, partially helped parents Maria. They planned to move from here into more spacious housing in a couple of years. But now everything could change. Taking off her shoes, Maria walked into the living room and sat down on the sofa. There were things on the tables: wedding invitations, booklets with photographs, wedding magazines. Everything, which made her so happy for a few more days back. Now it looked like memories of unfulfilled hopes. I'll go take a shower and change my clothes, he said Alexander, and then we can discuss what to do next. Okay. She nodded, not without saying a word. When he went to the bathroom, Maria looked around and saw her laptop on the table and decided to write to Anna a message. Anya, hi. Thank you for yesterday's speech. I really appreciate your support. Alexander and I want contact a family psychologist, perhaps to you, if appropriate, or to your colleagues. I don't want to drag it out. I want start as soon as possible. It's only been a few minutes, and Anna answered, Masha, honey, hang in there. I'm ready to help, but keep in mind that I am your close friend, therefore, from a professional point of view ethics may be difficult for us. I can recommend a colleague with extensive experience in the area of aggression. Write as you decide. I always there if you need moral support. Maria quickly responded, thank you. I want to do it with you first, talk like you would with a friend. And then I'll decide who should go to therapy. Anna wrote, okay, I'll be there this afternoon, I'm free. I can come to you or let's meet at the cafe. Maria looked at time. It was about 11 o'clock exactly in the morning. Come to my place, she suggested. I'll be home. Alexander is here too, but if necessary, he can leave till we talked alone. Anna, she agreed, and Maria put the phone down. She felt a little bit, she exhaled. Now she really did. I need to talk to someone who is her, understands, but will not just scold Alexandra or try to pull her over, leave immediately, position. She wanted to understand myself. Soon Alexander came out of the bathroom drying his hair with a towel. I texted Dmitri, apologized for this whole nightmare. He says that everything is fine and that they are with friends, will support us if needed. Alexander smiled awkwardly. Yesterday I thought that was all. Turn away. Maria looked at him. Some turned away, as you noticed. But there are still those who really want to. We wish you well. By the way, Anna will be arriving soon. I want to talk to her. Okay, he nodded. Should I stay or should I go? If you don't mind, I'll talk to her alone first, said Maria. Then, if necessary, we'll call you. Alexander shook his head. I don't mind. I would be glad myself, if it helps you understand everything. Then let's get the apartment in order for now. Order, she suggested, pointing at scattered wedding materials. It's hard to watch. Let's get to it. We'll put it in a box. Go ahead, he agreed. They stood together, collect brochures, invitations, wedding business cards. Maria got her hands on them, a photo of the two of them hugging against the backdrop of a blooming garden. It was a photo shoot taken just a month ago, when they were preparing a collage for the guests. Photos, they looked like happy. Maria felt a sharp prick in the chest. They really were a couple in love with plans for the future without a shadow of such aggression. Now everything otherwise. She carefully put the photograph down into the box, closed the lid, and they became it's easier when all the wedding reminders disappeared from sight. Half an hour later the doorbell rang. Alexander went open. Anna stood on the threshold, dressed in jeans and a simple white shirt without makeup, with a serious expression on his face. "Hello," she said as she walked in apartment. "How are you?" "Hi. We're trying come to my senses," answered Alexander, letting her in. "I'll leave you, let's talk." "Okay. I'll stay in the bedroom or I'll run some errands." "I think the first one, the time is better for Maria and me to be the two of us," Anna agreed. "Thank you, Alexander." He nodded and disappeared into bedroom, closing the door behind her. Anna went into the living room, hugged Maria, and I felt tears welling up in my throat. "Sit down," Maria suggested, pointing on the sofa. "Tea, coffee?" "Can I have some tea?" said Anna. "I see you're on your own edges. If you want, first just tell me everything in order. How are you? You feel without any analysis." I poured her some tea and took a glass for myself water, sat down next to me on the sofa and closed her eyes, took a deep breath and began talk about how I dreamed of a peaceful wedding, how I prepared, how I believed that they will be happy. And suddenly this blow, it wasn't just a slap in the face, she said. That was all. His face, distorted anger, his cry. "Don't disgrace me at people." I felt humiliated, scared, but at the same time didn't want to respond to him with the same aggression. It was as if something clicked inside. I realized that or I should start a scandal right there, or say that I forgive, but on one condition, that it won't happen again. But I don't either. I know why exactly these words came out. "I forgive you." Anna listened attentively, nodding. "And you really forgive him? Or was it more of an act of goodwill?" "No, I know," Maria admitted, lowering her gaze. "I feel pain, resentment, fear, but also I feel sorry for him. I know he had problems in the family that he didn't tell me about, told in detail. Now he says that the father constantly beat the mother, that he afraid to repeat his path. I can't throw it away on the very first day after weddings, he is dear to me. But now I'm afraid that I might make a mistake, and I have a life ahead of me with a man, which can strike again. I decided that I was giving him a chance," she concluded. Anna. "The question is, how can you to protect and how much you need him? You trust me?" "Yes," Maria nodded. "Said that we need a serious therapy, that he must learn control anger." "He's ready, so am I." "I'm ready. But I don't know if it will work out. I am afraid that if in a month, in a year he'll break down again, I'll regret not left now." Anna reached out to her hand and shook it palm. "Maria, it's your choice. Nobody can decide for you whether to leave now, while childless, or stay and try. Do you understand why I can't be your psychologist? I'm your friend, I emotionally involved. I can support you, but treat his aggression requires a professional who is not involved in your personal life to guide you, both of you. And maybe you two separate therapy will be needed to cope with fears." Maria sighed. "I understand, but advise me where to go, to whom contact." Anna thought. "I have colleague Elena Sokolova. She specializes in family therapy, especially with the problem of aggression in relationships, childhood trauma. If you want, I'll give you her contact information. She works both with couples and individually. I think she can help you." "Excellent," Maria nodded. "I told Alexander about that. I want to contact a specialist. He agrees too." "That's good." Anna. She was silent for a moment, then added, It's not my fault what he did. No, don't even think that you drove him crazy somehow. Even if your words they could have touched you, but that's no reason to raise it hand." "I understand," Maria nodded. "And, honestly, I feel like it's my fault, not mine. But still, there's some part of me blames myself for what I did. Started talking about his debts. Maybe too much, it was early, maybe there was a form unsuccessful." "No," Anna said firmly. "There are always healthier ways express dissatisfaction rather than violence. Remember this. Maria shook her hand in return, feeling grateful. Thank you to you, Anya. You helped me a lot. Yesterday I listened to your speech and had a feeling that it inspires me not to be ashamed of the problem, but consciously decide. I'm glad I was able to at least do that. Help, Anna chuckled. Sorry that I didn't have time to prevent all this. You're here, it has nothing to do with it, Maria objected. It was our internal problems that came out at the most inopportune moment. We sat for some time, discussing the plan actions. Maria will take Elena's contact information. Sokolova, call and arrange individual consultation for yourself and if possible for a couple. Alexander will undergo its own control program anger, if the specialist deems it necessary. They also decided that Maria should talk to your parents, explain that she is not a victim who blindly endures, and the girl who does a conscious choice. Well, she said, Anna, let's call Alexander if do you want it, or we can discuss something else together. Go ahead, Maria agreed so that he understands that we are not going to hide the problem. She stood up and walked into the bedroom where Alexander was sitting on the bed, scrolled through his phone, looking tense. Come in, Maria invited him. Anna wants to talk to us. He came in living room, sat down on the sofa next to Maria, trying not to look too depressed. Anna, he addressed. I understand that you can't be ours therapist, but please tell me if there is, do I even have a chance to get rid of it, this aggressive pattern of behavior? Or do such people never change? Anna looked into his eyes. There is a chance. But it depends on your readiness and motivation. If you really accept that you have a problem and go for a long course, you won't quit after a couple of consultations, then change is possible. I work with similar cases, and many men who grew up in families with violence, learned to live differently. But you shouldn't just go around for show, you need to really change, acknowledge your guilt, learn self-control, admit emotions. I'm ready, he said. And not because I'm afraid of losing Maria, although this is also an incentive, and because I realized, I don't want to be like that myself. This is already okay, Anna noted. I'll give you Elena Sokolova's contact information. Are you with her? Contact me. I think she will help you. And not forget that it's one thing to promise fix everything, and something completely different constantly work on yourself. There will be breakdowns, there will be moments when you want to give up everything, but no, I don't understand, he nodded Alexander. Thank you, Anna. And forgive me, in general, what is our holiday? Turned into this. It's not me who you are. Forgive, she said quietly, looking on Maria. But I still hope that you can handle it. After talking a little more about technical details, Anna got ready to leave. Maria walked her to the door, hugged me goodbye. Thank you for everything. I'll call when. When the door closed, the apartment became quiet. Maria, I felt a little better, though some kind of plan of action emerged. She turned to Alexander. Well, what shall we do? Call Elena? Let's do it right now, he asked. Or do you want to rest? I want to schedule the first meeting as soon as possible, she said decisively, so as not to tighten. He nodded approvingly. Okay. Maria dialed the number that Anna sent a message, and after several beeps I heard a female voice. Hello, Elena Sokolova speaking. Maria briefly explained the situation. We, a young family, faced aggression, we want to start therapy. You tell us, recommended by Anna. Elena answered in a calm, confident voice. She suggested schedule an appointment for next week. I asked if they needed it sooner, individual or couple session. Maria said that both are possible. In the end, they agreed to meet in 3 days. When the conversation ended, I put the phone on the table and circled at the living room with a glance. Alexander was nearby, looked at her with concern. Well, he asked. That's it, we've signed up for the nearest free time. First session, let's spend it together. Elena wants to understand our dynamics, and then, perhaps, he will prescribe separate meetings. Okay, he said. I will walk as long as necessary. Maria sighed and sank into a chair. Now we have to learn to live from day to day. I think it's worth it. Frankly, talk to my parents. I also wanted to see your parents, to understand, what was your family like, what do they think about all this? Maybe they have it too. My own point of view. Alexander tensed. My parents are a difficult topic. My father died a couple of years ago of heart failure attack, but my mother is alive. I don't have any problems with her. Such a warm relationship as you have with your family. She is very tired for her life from his father and does not like to remember that, what happened. But I don't mind if you want to talk to her. Warn her just so she doesn't feel under interrogation. Of course, she reassured him. Maria. I just want to understand how to protect us from repeating the stories that are drawn from the past. I understand, quietly he answered. They sat for a while in silence. Then Alexander asked, do you think we can be normal family? That is, without a permanent tension? I hope so, she replied, but I can't promise. We both have to work on it. I guess I do too. I should learn to speak more correctly about problems so as not to provoke you. Not because I blame myself, but because, that any conflict is best resolved calmly in words, without going to extremes. Yes, he agreed. I just have this. Apparently since childhood. I noticed, that at the slightest hint that they try to shame me, I start to feel it internally boil. And if you don't stop, an explosion occurs. I hope therapy it will help, she said. And in her voice a cautious confidence sounded. So their first week of marriage began. Instead of traveling, they stayed in Kaliningrad, agreed on consultations with a psychologist. Almost everyone we spent the day talking with family and friends. Maria's parents were still offended and worried, but agreed to wait with radical measures, since Maria is not wanted to file for divorce. Uncle Boris and Uncle Mikhail said that their doors are always open to niece friends. Someone advised to take a break from the relationship, someone, on the contrary, encouraged, saying, that they are strong since they solve the problem, they run away from her. Every day Maria I calmed down a little, although at night I often Alexander woke up from disturbing dreams tried to surround her with care, although I understood that this would not solve the problem right away. He made several attempts to get to her touch, hug, but she allowed its careful, as if checking to see if there is anything in it him aggression. Before the first session they were very nervous about the psychologist. On the appointed day they came to the office Elena Sokolova, who was in Cozy Center for Psychological Help. Elena herself met them in the corridor, a woman near the SOP, with a warm smile and glasses. Led into a small office with sofa and armchair, invited them to sit down in the way that is convenient for them. So, Elena began, when they settled in. You recently got married and faced an episode physical aggression. Tell me how it is. What happened, what did you feel and why decided to contact me? Maria and Alexander took turns presenting the facts, talked about their feelings, about what Maria forgave, but now she wants guarantees that this will not happen again. And Alexander feels guilty and at the same time fear that it might break down again. Elena asked clarifying questions, nodding, sometimes making notes in a notebook. I understand, she said after their story. It's very good that you decided seek professional help. This it means you both understand the seriousness problems. Now I will ask a few questions to Alexander, because in this situation, it is important to understand the root of aggression and your attitude towards yourself. Maria, if you want to add something, just tell me. Alexander took a deep breath, and the first big conversation began with professional about his childhood, about how father beat mother, about how he himself swore never repeat this. Elena clarified what he felt in those moments. Did he try to talk about this with someone? Did he feel shame, fear, anger? At first he answered reservedly, but gradually memories began to burst out with pain and tears. Maria sat nearby, clasping her hands into the castle, not daring to interrupt the flow of it revelations. I'm so ashamed, he said. I considered myself better than my father, but ended up doing the same thing. You see, Alexander? Elena said calmly. You are not your father. You have the opportunity to stop this pattern of behavior that passed down from generation to generation, if you are ready to work on yourself. But it won't happen by itself. You have to learn to recognize when your anger grows, and do not allow yourself to move on to physical violence. And if you feel like you're on the edge, you need to have action plan, such as getting out of rooms, get distracted, call someone. We will learn all this during therapy. I will try, he said. Then Elena turned to Maria. And you, Maria, how do you feel when you hear that Alexander has such a deep trauma from childhood? Do you sympathize, do you get angry, are you afraid? Maria thought. Probably everything together. I sympathize with him, but I'm afraid that this could happen again. I'm angry, because I don't want to live in fear, but because I love him, I decided not to run away right away. Anna nodded, that is, yours motivation is love and hope that he will change. Right? Yes, she confirmed Maria. But I realize that if I see repetition, then I will be forced to leave. That's fair, Elena said. I think so that every person has the right to security in relationships. And here it is important that Alexander understands that there is only one chance to prevent it repetitions. And your meetings with me, in addition to couples therapy, they can move on to individual lessons where you will learn to discuss conflicts without fear. Then they talked about how to build boundaries, how to react if you feel that emotions are running high. Elena advised, in the moment when you feel aggression, you need to learn to track physiological signs, increased heart palpitations, muscle tension, especially in the hands, clenched teeth. How as soon as you notice, you say, I need 5 minutes to be alone. Get out rooms, make several deep inhale, drink a glass of water. This better than keeping yourself on edge. Then come back to the discussion already, when a little calm down. Understood, he replied Alexander. I'll try. Trying is not enough, Elena smiled softly. It is necessary practice every time. The session lasted about hours, and during this time Maria felt that at least they are not left alone with their troubles. Elena wrote down their homework. Alexander should keep a diary of his emotions, writing down when and why you feel irritation and what actions undertakes for reassurance. And Maria shares hers feelings of fear or anxiety, speak them out, and don't keep silent about them. Thank you, said Maria as she left office. We'll come to the next one a week, as agreed. I'll wait, Elena nodded. And don't be afraid to write or call if there is an emergency will happen. They said goodbye and went out street. Maria and Alexander stopped at entrance to the center, gulping.